we're creating about as many jobs as those other metros combined.
So Bend hates to be compared to Boulder.
We could have a whole hour conversation about this. I think it sets us up another kind of foundation.
Participating. I think that's the difference between being a citizen or sitting on the sidelines.
These conversations are brought to you by the Ladd Group, Bend's leading real estate team. Help continue this BendBeat conversation by subscribing, sharing, and leaving us a review.
Colleen Dougherty is how you say it, and Pat Addabbo, is that how you say it?
Addabbo, yep.
Addabbo, excuse me. And you're the executive director for Oregon Adaptive Sports?
That's correct.
And Colleen, you've been involved in the organization a long time as well. One as an athlete and as an organizer for the organization as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, this is an organization that it took me a while to kind of get up to speed with how much you had going on here in the community. When I first moved to Bend, like we were talking about just a few minutes ago, I volunteered for the ski patrol and I saw the Oregon Adaptive Sports, but I didn't really understand the impetus, where it came from, and really how significant of an organization it was. And I would love to get a little bit deeper into kind of your personal journeys with the organization, and then kind of, how the community perhaps can get involved and help you guys out.
Great.
So I'm not sure, Colleen, let's start with you. So what's your Central Oregon origin story? What brought you here? Have you been here forever?
Oh, no. Well, I grew up in Portland and
Okay.
I lived in Tahoe for a couple
Okay.
years, Chicago for a couple years, back to Portland. And my parents from Portland moved over here in 92.
Okay.
And so I would visit them. And then I spent a winter here. Well, let me get back. But I was living in Tahoe.
Okay.
And working at their adaptive ski school at Alpine Meadows.
Okay.
And met a guy named Kendall Cook, who went to U of O, and I was ready to move back to Oregon. My parents were living in Bend, and I was like, oh, let's get an adaptive program at Bachelor.
So
Bachelor
at that time there was no adaptive program?
No.
Okay.
And with the ADA laws and things like that, you technically had to offer something.
Yeah.
So I remember when I would call up when I would come visit, and you call the Bachelor, and it would be whatever not negative about Bachelor by any means, I'm gonna cut that one, but just there wasn't an adaptive program. No.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, how cool would it be? We both want to move back to Oregon.
Yeah.
Let's do that, and let's try to figure out how to make an adaptive program at Bachelor. And there was two other instructors there. Kendall was an instructor at the Alpine Meadows program, and so we all moved to at the same time. There was four of us, 3 instructors and myself, who was a monoskier, and we would meet at our rental houses and try and figure out how can we approach Bachelor. And it was. It wasn't, mountains, I think, were a little scared of adaptive programs because it would bring in a lot of things that they would have to do. Yeah. That was our take on it. So it was a little bit of a struggle trying to figure out how we could create it. Yeah. And I ended up moving back to Portland for a couple years to pursue swimming. And they, kind of had a makeshift adaptive program. And I came back in 2003, and we really started to form more of a nonprofit. We got our 501(c)(3) status. We applied to be a chapter of DSUSA, which was the big umbrella organization that ran a lot of adaptive programs around the country.
Okay.
And so we got board members, we got people that, like a former lawyer, we got just people on our board.
Yeah.
And Parks and Rec was a big part of it.
Yep.
So then we got more involved with Bachelor, and then Hoodoo stepped up big time.
Okay.
And their building was already super accessible. And they welcomed us with open arms. And so that's kind of where the program really started to get a big kickoff.
And that was early 2000s?
Early 2000s. So okay. 2002, 2003.
Okay.
And then Bachelor, we got closer and closer to Bachelor. So it just kind of all came together.
Yeah. So do you currently operate both out of Hoodoo and Bachelor right now?
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, and you kind of glossed over, you got into swimming. You represented the U.S. in the 96 Paralympic Games.
Yeah. So it was a long time ago. So that's why I moved back to Portland, so I could really train during that time.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, Pat, let's get to you. What's your origin story for here in Central Oregon?
So I moved to Bend in the middle of the winter of 2016. And I was living at the time in Crested Butte, Colorado.
Sure.
Beautiful little mountain town, working for the Adaptive Sports Center that's based there. And I had gotten a degree in outdoor leadership, got into the adaptive sports industry working for a nonprofit organization in BC.
Okay.
Colleen mentioned actually DSUSA, that kind of national umbrella organization.
Okay.
That led me to the mountains. But after a few years there in Colorado, I was just ready to move and looking for an opportunity for a program that was ready to continue their progress of growth. And
Yeah.
I had been to Bend on a just personal trip about a year and a half before that. And
Yeah.
it was my favorite time of year here in the spring when you're skiing Bachelor in the morning, you're mountain biking in the afternoon, and
Yeah.
you're sitting somewhere with a beer in your hand that evening.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, what an amazing place. Bend has so many things to offer. And we were like, wow, what's going on in the adaptive world here? You know, I was with some friends of mine that also work for the program. And I feel like we sat around and had this vision for this great program
Yeah.
that already existed. But I started doing some inquiries and ended up pursuing an opportunity to come out and work for OAS. And they were fortunate I was fortunate for them to hire me, excuse me.
We were fortunate, yeah.
I met Colleen and a bunch of people when I came out in December of 2015 and then made the leap in 2016. So,
Well, let's get a little bit more into Oregon Adaptive Sports. Exactly what is it? What is your mission? You know, and kind of what are the metrics of what you hope to accomplish, you know, here in our community?
well, our mission is to provide high quality outdoor experiences for individuals with disabilities.
Okay.
So at the core of what we do, that's what it is. It's helping people get outside to ski, to cycle, to mountain bike, to paddle.
Okay.
The really of how we do it is based on what we call our pillars of access. So we are always working to maintain really 5 things that help create that access or break down barriers for people. First and foremost is having the world's greatest volunteers, a super talented staff and committed board of directors, people that dedicate tons of time in training and learning how to support individuals with disabilities to get outside.
Okay.
Second is going to be access to state-of-the-art adaptive sports equipment. If you're like loosely familiar with OAS, it's probably because you've seen our athletes out on the mountain or on the trails and these what are becoming incredibly high-tech sit skis and adaptive mountain bikes. These units of gear cost. A sit ski starts at $6,000, can be upwards of $15,000. Mountain bikes start at about $20,000 and go up from there.
Wow.
So those are really the top 2 things. We want to make sure people have access to the tools that they need to get outside,
Yep.
and the people that can support them to have a safe and successful experience.
Yeah.
Supporting those 2 things, we are always working to make sure we have access to accessible transportation. We have a small vehicle fleet. We try to be strategic about where we do programs so people can access them. We basically, the 4th pillar is we basically give everything away as much as we can. So we maintain a robust scholarship program.
Okay.
And we always make sure that finances are never a barrier for somebody to participate. All those things, as I mentioned, they're very expensive. It's very labor intensive what we do. We are very good at being a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Every time we send somebody out on the snow, it costs our organization anywhere from $300 to $500.
Yeah.
And the average income we get from that athlete is going to be $30 to $35.
Okay.
So we are covering a $300 to $400 fundraising gap basically every time somebody goes out. And then the last thing that we're always working to do is just build awareness, promoting the inclusion of individuals with disabilities in the outdoors. So opportunities like this, outreach events, things like that. So it's people, gear, transportation, scholarship, and awareness.
Yep.
Those are the 5 things that we're always working on to create as much access as possible.
Wow. So that's grown a lot since the early days.
Yeah, I can remember days where was maybe 4 of us.
Yeah.
So Kendall was always the instructor. I was kind of in my home office, the headquarters to manage the finances and finances meaning Kendall would bring an envelope down of money to me where people that whatever they could afford to pay. And we're talking dollar bills, coins. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but it's Kendall too, but he'd bring coins. And I would try and, put the dollars together, but our budget was maybe $4,000 to $6,000 I'm not even sure how we got that money to even get going, but maybe we all put some in, I can't remember, but it was, we had some volunteers, but it was, really funny compared to now.
I think that one of the things that's quote kind of sold me on OAS after working for other programs in other locations and still to this day has been, I think, that vision that you and Kendall said of the true like community accessibility. And I think that you all I love hearing those stories, and there's so many others of Colleen and Kendall and the early volunteers and just doing everything they could to make it possible. And it didn't matter if you could pay. It didn't matter how you showed up or if you had skied before or whatever. And I think that we really try to maintain that today. One of our guiding principles is to preserve and enhance the magic that makes OAS special. And some of these other places have these amazing programs. Steamboat Springs, amazing adaptive ski program. Crested Butte, where I came from, Park City, all the big names. But to be honest, they're pretty expensive.
Are
they?
But
I just went to one over in Utah. I mean, it was great. What's that?
Wasatch Adaptive.
Yeah, their rates for like $220 for a half-day lesson.
And they're exceptional programs. They're friends of ours. But I think the uniqueness of Bend being a mountain town, but also a small city, and the commitment of our founders and our board to just continue to make that accessible. And even if you can't pay a dime, if you can't get to the mountain, we're going to figure out how to make that happen and get you up there and get you sliding on snow. And especially if you live here in Central Oregon, we want you to have that access.
Well, I think this is a good case study for what makes Bend special, because there's so many instances where what someone wanted in the community didn't exist, so they created it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was most likely a bootstrap scenario where they just figured out how to kind of get the first thing, and then it kind of rolled up from there.
Yeah.
But there's very little that's brought in on this community from outside. Whether it's medical, whether it's business, whether, it's usually locals getting passionate about their specific thing and making it happen. Yeah. So it's come a long ways. If we put numbers on this, how many athletes, what is your goal for a number of athlete experiences, a number of athletes, that have access to this on a yearly basis? Can you quantify that?
Yeah, we can certainly quantify where we are and where we've been. We currently serve 500 to 600 unique individuals with disabilities every year.
Okay.
Many of those individuals will do multiple things with us. They'll ski a bunch of days, they'll bike a bunch of days. So by the end of the year, it results in 2,300 to 2,500 experiences.
Wow.
So every time somebody goes out and skis or bikes with us, we count that as one experience. Back in the day, it was a dozen for a season. Was a lot. Yep. It literally ran out of Colleen's house and Kendall's garage, and it was when the opportunity presented itself. But looking forward, we last year set a 10-year strategic vision, and just looking at the opportunities where the need is the greatest. How can we make sure that Oregonians and those visiting Oregon with disabilities have the best access to the outdoors? Yeah. And I'm a little hesitant to put specific numbers on it, because the potential is massive. Yeah. The Oregon Health Authority did a study a handful of years ago, and upwards of 20% of Oregonians identify as living with some form of disability. So if you quantify that just in Central Oregon, that's tens of thousands of people that potentially have some sort of need or something that could benefit from our service. Yeah. So we're just scratching the surface. So those numbers could grow dramatically. Or they might kind of move laterally in some ways, because something else we're looking at is not only do we want to serve more people, but we want to serve each person more. Okay. So we as it stands right now, we have more demand than we can fulfill. So we have people that would ski 3 or 4 days a week with us if we had the availability. As it is, we pretty much limit those opportunities to about once a week. I would love for our athletes to be able to participate as much as they want. They could ski every day if they had the opportunity to. It's a lofty goal, but that's the direction that we're heading.
Colleen, did you ever imagine 2,500 experiences a year?
No, not at all. No, it's I was in a meeting in the OAS offices, and it was during December, so the trainings were happening, and I remember almost getting teary-eyed, which I don't usually do, but just seeing all these new recruits coming in for their training, and how excited they were to be starting their involvement with OAS, and all the age ranges, and it's wow, okay, finally I'm passing the torch on, because it's my job is done. I mean, not really, but I'm still involved on the board and everything. But it was such a cool feeling to just see what it's become, and all the people all the participants and athletes and everything like that. It's amazing. But then all the community that is involved as a volunteer, it's and how much it means to them.
Well, we've been talking a lot about kind of the numbers and the operation. Let's talk about the experience. You know, are there some anecdotal stories either through yourself or through other people that really kind of hits home and helps people understand, you know, what an important organization this is? Like, you know, what does this do to people's life that otherwise would have these barriers?
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure Pat has many things. I'll just say and then you can chime in. But for myself, you know, just adaptive sports in general. I mean, I started in Tahoe with skiing again, so that was, and swimming. I mean, it's an adaptive sport, but it's not. I mean, you don't need a lot of special equipment to swim.
Yeah.
So I don't consider it like a big barrier.
Okay.
I mean, finding a pool, but it's more like needing the equipment, like monoskiing for me.
Yeah.
Just getting in, well, and swimming too, but getting involved in a sport that is very social and you can do with your family and you can do with peers or people, and then you just get back into the community, and it just really develops your sense of self again. After, especially if you've gone through an accident or something where you're like, oh gosh, what's next? What's my life gonna be like? And so it opened so many. I mean, it sounds a little bit silly, like going back and skiing and working at an adaptive program. It opened up so many other doors for me, whether it's socialness or travel or you know, feeling good about myself. So I'm back at a job, or I'm trying to accomplish you know, more goals. And it's almost like you're, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it just continues to open more and more doors once you get back into feeling like your self-worth and your confidence, and that you can go do fun stuff like you used to, and what all the other people are doing.
Yeah.
So it just kind of ricochets into a much higher quality of life. And sports, you know, most people are like, sports makes you have a higher quality of life. Well, it really does, because it has so many facets that come with being active and being outdoors.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that people just take for granted, and it's like, you know, and if you're not looking through that lens, you don't even see that missing experience in others.
Yeah. And I've seen it with all of the years of OAS, you know, not for myself, but for the stories I see and the people I've met when they first come out, and you know, what they're doing with their lives now after being involved with OAS. So you probably have some good stories.
I think something, you know, is worth sharing is we serve all ages, we serve all disabilities, we serve all abilities. So meaning it could be an athlete's first time ever getting on skis or a bike, or we're also supporting now 2 athletes who are pursuing the Cortina Paralympic Games. They're trying to compete at the highest level. So
cool.
We serve that entire spectrum. And especially on that all disabilities, you know, standpoint, we serve adults with spinal cord injuries, we serve kids on the autism spectrum or with other developmental or intellectual disabilities. We have a great program with the local school district called the Ski for Life program, and there's so many stories that have come out of that. We serve basically every high school in Central Oregon, and we partner with their life skills classrooms to bring up their students with disabilities to learn to ski. And so they'll start as freshmen, and then they'll ski with us every year of high school, often into young adulthood. And we've seen a couple kids go on and work at Mount Bachelor, which I think is really awesome. We have one kiddo, well, he's in his late 20s now, Dustin, who started skiing with us. And I mean, these are sometimes kids that maybe they've seen snow because it snowed in town or whatever, but they've never been in the mountain. And skiing is just not part of their family. And so that first season could be our volunteers working with them just to get familiar with what a ski boot is, and working on getting comfortable in these hard plastic, you know, shoes and all this sort of stuff. And then ultimately progressing. And Dustin has been a great athlete for us. He was adopted by an incredible set of humans, Glenn and Diana, his parents, and they introduced him to OAS, and seeing his self-confidence grow. And just Diana, I've heard her say, like, after he started skiing with OAS, he no longer says I can't, because that was something that our volunteers worked with him on, was you can, you just need to learn. And he started learning, and now Dustin still skis with us every week long since out of high school. And the first thing he wants to do every time it comes up, summit. That's all he wants to do is go ski summit. And as we know, summit's not open every day, so it doesn't always work out. but he lives for it now all winter long. They actually live in La Pine, and every time the mountain's out, they'll say that he's looking up to the mountain, asking about skiing. When are we skiing? When are we skiing? So, I mean, there's endless. There's hundreds of stories we could tell, but I think that's one we don't often share enough. It's just our work in the local community and seeing the kids that are just here, our neighbors in their classrooms, getting up and living their best lives on the mountain.
Brian Ladd here. I hope you're enjoying the conversation and find this dialogue relevant to really what it means to live and work and play in this amazing community. As Ben's leading real estate team, we take our role seriously in representing both buyers and sellers at the absolute highest standards of our industry. For more information on how we can help, feel free to visit our website at benpropertysource.com or text LAD1, LADD1 to 88,000.
Who are your primary partners with your organization?
From an operating standpoint, first and foremost, the ski areas.
Okay.
So Mount Bachelor and Hoodoo are our primary program partners and our biggest supporters every year. They donate tons of things to OAS in kind, huge or fully donated lift tickets, depending on the program or if it's for volunteers or athletes. They both give us space in their lodges to operate our programs out of, and then just the operating support to run our programs every day up there. We also have a small pilot program that we're running in Southern Oregon at Mount Ashland.
Okay.
And we're working on navigating what that opportunity looks like. We've done a couple seasons. If you've ever been down to Mount Ashland, it's great skiing, but probably the most inaccessible ski area in the country.
I've never been there.
Super cool, just this old Victorian architecture lodge, but they're working with us as well because they see the need down in that region. So the ski areas are critical in our partnership. And as Colleen mentioned earlier about the ADA and the need for accessibility, I think we do our best to hold up our end of that deal and going way above and beyond what the minimums are. So we want to make sure that skiers with disabilities and their families also have that exceptional experience that those ski areas are trying to provide. And I'll toot our own horn here a little bit. We were just mentioned, Powder Magazine just ranked us as the third, Mount Bachelor specifically, as the third best adaptive ski program in the country.
Wow.
So it was Park City,
That's awesome.
I saw
Steamboat,
Wow.
OAS at Mount Bachelor, which is just a huge, I think, piece of recognition. And we wouldn't be able to do that without our partnership at Bachelor and what they do for us. And then the summer is similar. We partner with Ben Parks and Rec. We utilize their facilities quite a bit. We try to fill gaps that they're unable to fill. We partner with entities like Cycle Oregon has been huge for us. We take a group of athletes to participate in some of their rides every year, giving athletes that kind of more challenging experience to do multi-day rides. We have partners with other foundations like Craig Hospital, which is a hospital out of Denver. Mm-hmm. It's the nation's leading spinal cord and traumatic brain injury rehabilitation facility. So as far as growing the scope of the organization, we're always looking for partners in so many different ways. Yeah. So they could be agencies that manage land or facilities that we can utilize, and we can help them to make things more accessible or more adaptive. It could be other partners like Craig Hospital that are looking for outlets for their population to get outside or participate in what we have to offer. It can be the school districts. I think that the thing about sports and recreation is it kind of interfaces in so many different ways. We have a great existing and growing partnership with OSU Cascades. We have an intern or two every year that works with us in the ski program. We have supported some of their students in some of our programs. So the list goes on and on. And all of it just kind of adds up. Yeah, the Kelly Brush Foundation is another huge partner of ours. We co-sponsor an event in the spring called Turns and Berms. Yeah. That classic Bend Spring Day. We support individuals with spinal cord injuries to ski Bachelor in the morning and mountain bike in the afternoon. We brought in 25 individuals with spinal cord injuries last year from as far away as Rhode Island came in for this event. And that's all in partnership with them. That's their mission, is to specifically support that population to purchase equipment and do big adventures like that. So.
Wow, so it's turned into a big animal. What's your primary source of funds for your organization?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we are really good at being a nonprofit. So, let me start on the other end of the pie. The smallest wedge of the revenue pie is the money that we get from our athletes. So it's less than 5% a year. It comes from the fees that we charge for our program. So that means 95% of it is coming from various sources. About half of that we raise in our two biggest fundraisers. So we have two big events, one in March called the Ski for All.
Okay.
And that's an all-day ski-a-thon, scavenger hunt, just huge celebration up at Mount Bachelor. And then we have a party afterwards in town.
Okay.
And our goal this year is to raise $225,000. Huge community effort. We'll have a couple hundred people, hopefully, that sign up, and they do a lot of fundraising on behalf of OAS.
Okay.
So, Colleen will sign up and she'll make a little fundraising page and reach out to her network and say, hey, look how far we've come. Please give me lots of money to help support this thing.
Well, yeah, people have teams and every year and
Super fun. It's the best day of the season, honestly. It's like you cannot have more fun skiing than that day.
What day in March is that?
It'll be March 15th.
March 15th, okay.
And then we have a big fundraiser in the fall, your classic nonprofit gala dinner auction, where we tell some great stories and ask for some support. So that's about 40-50%. A quarter of the budget, roughly, depending on the year, is grant funding, typically through family foundations, agencies that we partner with, like Travel Oregon, Visit Central Oregon, Visit Bend. These have been big partners for us because they know we're increasing accessibility for our visitors. The St. Charles Foundation, Roundhouse Foundation, a lot of the known, bigger foundations regionally or locally are big investors in what we do. And then the other kind of quarter to third is just ongoing support from the community, both from individuals and businesses. So whether it's a pint night at the Chutes where we, collect a few hundred to a couple $1,000 to individuals just sharing their generosity with us at the end of the year, that kind of makes up that last piece of the pie.
So obviously you've got a lot going on. You've created an absolute animal to control here. 2,500 experiences a year with involvement with a lot of organizations from fundraising on through. I guess it gets back to the why. What's driving everyone in the organization to continue to provide a service of this level? What's getting you excited in the morning when you have a big day ahead of you with a lot of athletes coming, and it's just an organizational, quagmire. Maybe it's not a quagmire.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's a lot of logistics involved.
It can be, yeah. Yeah, I think the core of what we do, why does OAS exist? And I think we have this shared belief in the transformative power of the outdoors. And that's certainly what has driven me to pursue this as a career, which is, I still think, wild to say that I've been able to do this as a job for so long. Colleen has touched on it in so many ways of how sports was so integral in her life. And you see that every athlete we serve, every volunteer that gets involved, everybody that gives $1 or $10,000 to our mission, they resonate with that feeling. They know that experience when you're up on the mountain and you feel the mental, the physical health benefits of exercise, community. I mean, these are the ingredients of happiness that we're giving people. It's truly transformative. And that part, I think, is what connects us all too, is it has nothing to do with disability or adaptive or access. It's everybody that gets outside and does one of these types of activities shares in that feeling, that the transformation that they go through. And we just want to make sure that that's as accessible as possible to everybody.
How can people get involved? If someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, this is Meg's organization, I guess, what would be step one? How can they donate and give? And then two, how could they get involved in a more material way? Maybe it's coming to the dinner, maybe it's starting volunteering. What's the best, path for onboarding people that have desire?
First and foremost, go to our website. We have a great website, lots of information. You can give securely and easily directly online if you feel so inclined. You can also learn the answer to all these types of questions. So we have a very robust volunteer program. We've touched on it numerous times. We have over 300 volunteers that support our program. They'll donate over 7,000 hours in the course of a year. Because it's such a volunteer-intensive program, we have it very mapped out and what it takes to get involved, the trainings, the commitment, et cetera. We have a bunch of events in the community. They're always going on. We have our big events, the skiing fundraiser in March, the fall gala in October, but we also have ongoing pint nights, give back days. We have a big Dutch Bros give back day this Friday that's coming up.
Okay.
That's big.
It's huge. We're also just always looking for people that have questions or interested. And that's why, we have this great little office in Southwest Bend, and we encourage you just to come stop by.
Well, I'm humbled by the efforts and what you guys have done and what you've created, Colleen. Congratulations. You don't need that from me, but like it's very humbling to realize, you know, what one person can do and when you harness a vision and how many people are willing to get in line with you.
Mm-hmm.